Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Uh, Very good evening to all the viewers from all over the world. Thank you so much. This is your host, Minhas Tejani, and welcome to the third session of Light. Light, as the viewers know, is an acronym, and Light stands for Let's Inspire and Grow Human Transcendence. And we are very humbled enough and we are grateful to yet another educator who is, I would call him a well-renowned, world-renowned educator who will be sharing his wisdom today with us. And our guest speaker this evening is Professor Dr. Sadrudin Pardhan. Let me introduce him formally. First of all, a very warm welcome, Dr. Sab, on this light third episode. Professor Dr. Sadrudin Pardhan is a professor emeritus and a special advisor, the Office of the Provost at Aga Khan University. And Dr. Pardhan did his Doctor of Philosophy in chemistry from Uppsala University, Sweden. And he also has done a Masters of Business Administration from University of Alberta, Canada. His research interests are institutional building, school improvement program, science education, and educational management. He is also professionally associated with Kenya Science Teachers Association, American Educational Research Association, and he's also a founding member of Professional Teachers Association Network at the Aga Khan University. I remember meeting Dr. Pardhan in the boardroom of Aga Khan University Institute for Educational Development, when I was told by the secretary of Al-Murtaza Schools, Mr. Jamil Yusuf, that you have a meeting. So I went with my core team, a little bit scared. I don't know, that bit was already there at the back of my mind that, oh, I'm meeting the director of Institute for Educational Development. But since then, definitely he has been able to impact my thinking, my philosophy of education, and I think we are more friends to each other. He's my mentor, and he has been guiding, he has been helping, and not only myself, but wherever I have served as an educational leader, he has always been there to support. And through him, I think there is a lot of change that I experienced in various educational institutions. So very warm welcome once again to Dr. Sadrudin Pardhan. And I now hand it over to him to share his wisdom. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Minas. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. It's always been a pleasure to interact with you. So let me start formally. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Because Minas said that this is live streamed everywhere in the world. So, well, let me greet you in every different way. When Minas first talked to me about this, I mean, I wondered what he was really looking at. And then he sent me a sheet of paper. And what intrigued me, of course, the title was Light, but what really intrigued me was the first sentence. And I think the first sentence is very interesting, and I'll read it to you. The calling for humans in all fields of life is to be kind and compassionate towards everyone around them. It's a philosophy that I totally live. And so I thought this will be interesting. And then I looked at the two questions, which were really daunting. The second question I'll read first. What is the key lesson of my life that has inspired me grow as a human? And the second one was, which is actually the first on his paper, what makes human transcendence essential in the 21st century? So of course, there was a lot of thinking. He had mentioned this to me quite a while back, and I mulled over it, and I looked at different approaches and different aspects that had structured my life. And I said, let me talk about me from my childhood. And why I'm saying this is because it's an interesting one. And so I asked myself a question: how have I evolved? How have I negotiated the fast, challenging environment? Because these questions are very heavily focused on that. How have I helped my children to do that? Because I am in my 8th decade, but 9th decade of history that I've lived. Have my values changed? So there are many questions that came to me. But not to worry, I will not take too much of your time to answer this. Now, when I was born, we were at the tail end of World War II. So post-World War II, we had a lot of things happening. There was war reparation going on around the world. And then, of course, with the way the world was evolving, from that time until now, in 75 years, there have been at least 10 major wars. Let me quickly count. Korean War, Vietnam War, Middle East War, Libya crisis, 9/11, Iraq War, Syria War, Afghanistan War, which we are still seeing, Iran issues. And there is one common factor there. There's one player that appears everywhere. And that player happens to be the most powerful nation in the world. So you start wondering what's going on. Now, while those things were happening, my generation was also witnessing decolonization. My generation was witnessing the space race. The Russians had suddenly beaten America into the space. You probably heard of the Sputnik. So that scared America, that my God, there is a country that has gone ahead of them in technology. And Americans can't take that kind of a defeat, you see. And then technology was moving very fast. But one other thing that was coming up was the student power. Students were making a difference. Students in European countries, students in America, students in Canada, in advanced countries, were making it clear that their voices must be heard, because they were very unhappy with a lot of these things that were happening. And what was also very interesting is there were two countries which were not at all involved in these wars, etc. One was Japan, which had just come out of the war really beaten. So they were rebuilding and they were re-looking at their lives. And the other one was China, which had also suffered a lot at the hands of the colonialists, you see. And they had literally closed their borders. And suddenly when they opened, we saw a country that was ready to compete with anybody else in the world. So very interesting life that I have experienced. So when I tracked back at my life, I said, how do I answer that second question? What is it that structured my life? And there's one person who had a huge influence on me. And that happened to be my own mother. And why I think that is a very interesting thing is because there were 5 factors that her life revolved around. One was a strong faith. She's a very staunch Muslim. She practices the Shia Ismaili faith, or she practiced the Shia Ismaili faith, and she had a strong faith. I'll talk a little bit more about it because that is the one that influenced me a lot. Then she had a husband, my father, who was almost blind, but a very clever man. He was a very good communicator. His vision was only about 10-15%. So she had to manage him also. And she did a great job looking after him. He also had a very strong faith. You asked him a political question, he would be there to answer it. You ask him a question on education, he was well aware. He was an avid sports fan. And he was very well read, in spite of the fact that his eyes were very poor. And right from the morning at 6 o'clock, the radio would be on. Soon after Maghrib, the radio would be on, and he would listen to Radio Pakistan, All India Radio. And remember, we were living in Africa at that time. You would listen to BBC, Voice of America, all kinds of radio, because there was no TV. And the crackling sound, and we were just about waking up at that time. So there were, that's the way the life was. Then there were 3 other things my mother was involved in. Another important thing was children. We were 5 siblings. 2 firstborn were girls, 3 next ones were boys. And what was very important for her was education. Why was she interested in education? Because she herself was educated. She had completed 8 classes and she read and wrote Gujarati language very well. She also spoke a local African vernacular, which was very rare. It is a language called Luo, because in Kisumu, the city where we were staying, there was no Swahili. And then, of course, she spoke Swahili also, which was a national language, and ultimately English. So she knew the power of education. Now, in order to give us education, 2 things were very important to her. One was that we had to be healthy. So she made sure that in spite of the fact that we were quite poor, she made sure that there was nutritious food on the table. That way, we would never have to suffer. And the other one was she encouraged sports for us. Now, she made sure that all 5 siblings got well educated. Now, what did good education mean at that time? Our 2 sisters went up to O levels. Because after that, there was no other facility available. Now, the 3 boys, my older brother, myself, and my younger brother. Our parents told us that, hey, guys, you educate yourselves, we'll support you, but we don't have money. But we managed. So between the 3 of us, we ended up with 12 degrees.
Wow.
Of those 12 degrees, 2 were PhDs, 1 CA, 2 MBAs, 1 MSc, 3 BScs, 1 BCom, 1 BEd, and 1 in education. All 3 of us ended up being chief executive officers of education services in different countries. Each of us ended up being directors. And what I'm saying is that my mother was the root of all this. She encouraged us. So that is the tremendous influence that she had on us. But the story doesn't end there. Because remember, we were 5 siblings. So we had our own children. We ended up producing 12 grandchildren for my mother. And all of them ended up with university education. So they produced 4 teachers, 2 doctors, 1 dentist, 4 executives of big companies, 1 business person, 1 PhD, and all of them were master's degrees. Again, it goes back to my mother. The influence she had on us and the influence we had on our children. But the story still doesn't end there. Because our children have had their children. So my mother's great-grandchildren. Of those, seven I have already qualified from universities. Of those, 6 are still at university, and the rest of them are in good schools. Seven I have already qualified from it. Oh, there's a background. Okay.
I think it's fixed now. Yeah.
So now let me go back to my mother. While she was really powerful when it came to making sure that we educated, one other characteristic of her influenced me particularly tremendously. Very strong faith. Now she would go for meditation at 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning. And in those days, we didn't even have electricity in the city where I lived. So often at times, I'm the one who would carry the lantern so that we could see the road and we could go to the Jamaat Khana where she meditated. That influenced me tremendously. So I was also practicing, I was participating. And not only was she meditating, and that is what I think gave her a lot of peace, she was also heavily involved in voluntary work in the place of prayers. So those 2 things came with me also. So even today, for example, I try my best to practice meditation 4 o'clock in the morning, before the light hits the earth in our part of the world. And that is one of the most satisfying, soothing, and peaceful things. Because when you meditate, you make sure that the world doesn't exist. So you're literally looking at emptiness. You're looking at emptiness to give you peace. And it works. And I think that is quite an amazing feeling. And that's the influence that I got from my mother. And fortunately, all my children also have had influence from this. So to recap, my mom was responsible for the way I got educated and stayed healthy. And second one was my faith was extremely strong. But remember, as we moved from the 1950s, 60s were the years of education, 70s, lots of wars, lot of problems, oil problems, technology was coming up, 80s technology was coming up, and what the oil did, what it helped to improve the facilities. That's how people got away from the simple life to material life. So the oil made sure that we had a lot of clothes available, a lot of different kinds of things available. So we started being influenced by things, material world. And as a result, what happened? With materials, you start competing. And you start forgetting that there is a being up there that sent you in this world. And I think that was quite amazing. And then through technology came the computers. And from the desktop, from mainframe came desktops, from desktop, laptops, from laptop to the handheld devices. And what else came is this social media.
Yes.
So now you see what's happening. You know, in school, we learn and teach about 21st century skills. And we talk about how you should cooperate, how you should do group work, creativity, skills, language skills, communication, reading skills, critical thinking, media literacies, etc. All kinds of technology. But one thing we never teach, and which is a great pity, how do you become a good human being? We don't teach that.
Yes, yes,
and
absolutely.
That is what I thought is the focus of that first sentence that in the note that Mina sent me. Let me read it again. The calling for humans in all fields of life is to be kind and compassionate towards everyone around us. But what has technology and materialism done to us? All the 21st century skills that I read about was you be the best. You be the most meritorious so that you can compete. So it's all about competition rather than about being a good human being.
Absolutely.
And that's where the education of my mother became extremely important for me and my family. So one thing I can proudly say is that amongst all siblings and our children and our grandchildren, one thing that we have always cherished is humanity. How do you continue being good human being? And remember what I told you. Those fellows, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, are all extremely well educated. If we were a family, and if you made a phone call and asked for Dr. Pardhan, 9 people will say yes. Different kinds of doctors, PhDs, medical doctors, dentists. So it's a very educated group. And yet one thing common, which I can proudly say, is that I think there is a lot of humanity in the Pardhan clan. And it all goes back to one person, or maybe 2, mother, with some help from the father. So answering your second question, Vinas,
yes.
What is the key lesson of my life that has inspired me grow as a human being? The key lesson was how to be a good human being as taught by my mother through education and faith.
Wow.
That's what it boils down to. Okay?
Excellent.
So you see, the second question helped me to answer the first question. Because of faith, because of good education, and where you consider the human being as the most important person. Think of a mosque where you are praying. You are all standing in a line. There is no status there. Everybody is equal.
Absolutely.
And in Islam, That's what humanity is all about.
Yeah.
So you see, that's how we ended up answering that first question. And what does the first question say? What makes human transcendence essential in 21st century? And I think it's the very rapidly changing environment for us. The materialism, all the wars that we have seen have only one cause, is to grab natural resources that belong to others, convert them into materials and sell it back to us so that we can enjoy it. But the damage they do, the millions of people that have been killed as a result, it hasn't mattered. So how can our friends in the West point a finger at people in the East and say that you are inhuman, you are a terrorist? Minas?
That's a fundamental question. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as I wind up, I just want to thank you because it really, really made me think. I am ever so grateful to my mother for the kind of upbringing that we had. Very poor, but very rich in her culture, very rich in her faith, and very rich in her ideas. Thank you very much.
This is amazing. You know, I have a little bit of tears in my eyes. Very emotional, very emotional. And, you know, when somebody talks about his or her own mother, then you start going into your own self. And I was recalling, Alhamdulillah, my mother is very much alive. She's very active. And, you know, the time that I spend with her, you know, all those moments are so full of wisdom. And, you know, she always shares something new. So the mothers, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this this very supreme, you know, being for us. So yeah, thank you so much. This was such an inspirational, you know, talk, and I'm glad that I encourage you to think and, you know, think a lot deeply. And that's the essence, Dr. Sab, of this you know, this entire initiative. That I personally feel, you know, being in the field of education for almost 3 decades, I feel that there is a lot of materialism that has come in to the education sector, you know, and a very significant aspect that you have mentioned. And I think this is a calling for all the educators who are listening to this talk, or maybe who will listen to the talk later on, is that how do we develop good human beings? Because that is a very rare, you know, thing. We are trying to get good marks in the schools, and we are trying to win competitions and all this and that. But where is the essence of you know, of developing or nurturing the human being? So very strong point that, and very relevant point that you have highlighted. Thank you so much, Dr. Sab, once again for your extreme wisdom. And I'm sure you know, this particular talk will give a lot of you know, room to others who are listening to the talk, that they will think about it, they will ponder. And one strong message that Dr. Sab has given is think of your mothers, and be with your mothers if they are alive. If they are not, unfortunately, then at least think of the good lessons that you have learned through them, both your parents, your mothers, and your fathers.
Oh,
So with
absolutely.
these words, yeah. Do you want to say any final comment or any final word?
No, well, the only thing, the thing that I would like to add is that, I'm looking at the evolution of our grandchildren. So my mother's great grandchildren. Right now, it's wonderful. They are all very well educated, or they are in good schools, and all of them are on a trajectory where they will become university graduates of different kinds. They are also into some very sophisticated areas. But they are also living in a very different world, because our family left Kenya, and they are dispersed in many parts of the world. Very large number is in Canada. There's still a small number in Kenya, and we are in Pakistan. And they are excelling. They are not only excelling in education, they are also excelling in sports. Remember, sports was a very important part in our family. So we have one grandchild who is planning to compete in the Olympics in the next round in gymnastics. One is a very expert ballerina. And a couple of them one of them is trying out as a professional footballer in France. So you see, that influence is now showing up in the second, third generation. So that evolution takes place over time, right? And that kind of fascinates me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they evolve. If life stays with me for a while, we will probably enjoy some laurels at international level also.
Inshallah. Our prayers are with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so
unless
much.
there are any other questions, I'm willing to answer any questions.
So I think you have summed it up very well. Before we put a close to this session, I just want to thank Dr. Sadrudin Pardhan for being the guest speaker on this third episode of Light. And inshallah, this journey hopefully will continue, and we'll be having more guest speakers on this show. If you want to find out more about what Tejani Consulting is doing, please visit our website, www.tejaniconsulting.com. We have also recently announced an online course for the school leaders. It's called Principles for Principals. So if anybody is interested, you can get more details from our website. Thank you very much, viewers. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Sab, for your time and for your wisdom.
My pleasure.